Benjamin Carter, the founder and CEO of the IronGrill Steakhouse chain, sat alone in his car, parked just out of view from one of his suburban locations. Though he had built the company from the ground up over the past 8 years, turning it from a struggling hole in the wall into a respected regional brand, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Online reviews had dipped. Customer complaints were rising. And this particular branch, nestled between a strip mall and a gas station, had become the worst performer in the group. Benjamin had read the quarterly reports, listened to the polished explanations from his district manager, and nodded through the meetings. But numbers couldn't tell the whole story, and he wasn't going to wait for another excuse. He needed the truth, and the only way to get it was to go see for himself. So he did what no one expected from a CEO. He disappeared. For the first time in years, Benjamin traded his tailored suits for scuffed black slacks, a second-hand polo shirt, and a name tag that simply read, Ben. A wig with specks of grey, a patchy beard, and thick-rimmed glasses completed the transformation. By 3 p.m., just before the dinner prep began, he walked through the back door of the IronGrill as a new hire transferred from a location that had supposedly closed. The general manager, barely looking up from her clipboard, waved him in without question. "Grab an apron," she said. "You'll be shadowing Jasmine tonight." Jasmine, a sharp, no-nonsense server in her 30s, gave him a curt nod and tossed him a notepad. "Keep up," she muttered, "or you'll get left behind." As the restaurant filled with customers and the hum of dinner service rose, Benjamin quickly noticed cracks in the operation. The staff looked worn down, tired, frustrated, stretched thin. Orders took too long to come out, and when they did, they were often wrong or missing key items. The kitchen line was chaotic, communication frayed. Jasmine handled it all with the kind of practiced calm that only came from surviving daily storms. Benjamin, trailing behind her, asked quietly, "Is it always this hectic?" She didn't even look up. "We're short, 2 servers and a busser. One quit last week. The other just stopped showing. Nobody sticks around." When he asked about the kitchen, she only said, "You'll see," and moved on. He saw soon enough. 40 minutes into the rush, Benjamin returned a steak to the kitchen, cold in the center, barely touched by the customer. "Need this redone," he said as he placed the plate in the pass-through. That's when Todd emerged. The head chef was tall, bald, and wore a grease-streaked apron. His face was hardened into a permanent scowl. He slammed a spatula on the counter. "Cold. What the guy eating it doesn't have teeth." Benjamin didn't flinch. Todd leaned in closer. "Next time, tell them to stop whining and eat their damn food. I'm not their mother." Just as Benjamin was about to speak, a soft voice interrupted. "I'll remake it, chef." It came from Eli, the youngest person on the line, a wiry kid with curly hair and hands that trembled slightly as he reached for the plate. Todd turned to him sharply. "You think I need you to step in? You're here to chop onions and keep quiet. Go clean the fryer." The humiliation landed like a slap, and Eli's shoulders sagged as he carried the plate away. No one said anything. The tension was suffocating. Jasmine shoved a fresh plate toward Benjamin. "Take this instead. Table 7. And the shift moved on as if nothing had happened. But Benjamin had seen it. And it wasn't just a bad moment. It was a symptom of something far worse. Later, when the rush had finally slowed, Benjamin made his way back into the kitchen. Eli was at the fryer, scrubbing with rubber gloves that were clearly too big for him. "You all right?" Benjamin asked, keeping his voice low. Eli looked up, startled. "Yeah. Sorry. I didn't mean to." He trailed off, then forced a smile. "Rick's he gets like that when he's stressed." Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "That happen a lot." Eli hesitated. "Only when we're busy. Which is always." The kid tried to sound unaffected, but the words didn't hide the truth. When Benjamin asked if he'd ever thought of quitting, Eli nodded faintly. "Every day. But I can't. My mom's sick. Insurance helps cover her meds." In that moment, Benjamin saw past the surface. This wasn't just a broken system. It was crushing people who had no choice but to endure it. That night, Benjamin returned to his car and sat silently watching the last few employees drift out the back door. Eli was the last to leave, backpack slung over one shoulder, head down. Benjamin's jaw tightened. This wasn't about low tips or bad management anymore. It was about dignity. He didn't know yet whether Todd was an outlier or the root of the rot, but he intended to find out, and he wouldn't stop until he did. The next afternoon, Benjamin returned to the IronGrill branch, still in disguise, as Ben, the worn-out transfer hire, with tired eyes and a borrowed name. He arrived earlier this time, just before the staff began prepping for dinner service. From the moment he walked in, the atmosphere felt heavy, like the walls themselves were used to bracing for impact. No one smiled. No one cracked a joke. Even the clatter of pots in the kitchen sounded more like caution than rhythm. Maria, the prep cook, was slicing potatoes at a breakneck pace, her shoulders tense and her eyes glued to the board. Eli was washing greens at the sink, silent and withdrawn. Benjamin watched them for a moment and saw what he hadn't. The night before, this wasn't just stress, it was fear stitched into muscle memory. Dinner service picked up quickly. Orders began flowing in, and the pressure in the kitchen grew with each ticket. Benjamin worked his assigned tables alongside Jasmine, who handled the chaos with mechanical grace. But the kitchen once again became the eye of the storm. Todd arrived 30 minutes late, mumbling about traffic, then immediately launched into barking orders without washing his hands. As the grill flared and plates began stacking up, Todd's voice cut through the air like a blade. He shoved a tray aside that Eli had just garnished, knocking the boy's elbow in the process. "You're not plating tonight, kid. Go find something you can't screw up." Eli didn't protest. He simply stepped back, rubbing his arm, face flushed with embarrassment. Minutes later, Todd cornered Maria about the prep list. "You call this stocked? We're low on mushrooms again. Are you blind or just dumb?" Maria didn't respond. She just kept chopping, her jaw clenched. While the kitchen simmered with tension, the front of house showed its own cracks. Benjamin was flagged down by a couple at table 6 who had been waiting 20 minutes for their drinks. He hurried to the bar only to find Chase, the bartender, leaning casually against the counter, scrolling on his phone. "Drinks for table 6 still not up?" Benjamin asked, trying to sound casual. Chase didn't look up. "You'll get them when I get to them." Benjamin blinked, caught off guard. "They've been waiting a while." Chase finally raised his eyes, glazed with indifference. "Not my fault you guys don't know how to pace orders. Chill out. It's not that deep." The words hung in the air, thick with apathy. Benjamin didn't reply. He made a mental note of Chase's name tag, grabbed the drinks himself, and delivered them to the guests with an apology. As the shift wore on, the restaurant continued its performance, barely holding together on the surface, but cracking underneath. At closing, Benjamin slipped into the back hallway and found Eli bent over a prep table, wiping down surfaces with robotic focus. Todd passed by and pointed with his chin. "You missed a spot." Eli looked, but found nothing there. "I don't see Todd," cut him off with a smirk. "Exactly. You don't see much do." Benjamin stepped in quickly. "I'll get it," he said calmly, moving toward the same area. Todd scoffed. "What are you, his babysitter, just lending a hand?" Benjamin replied, keeping his voice steady. The moment passed, but the damage lingered. Later, Benjamin found Eli alone in the walk-in cooler, organizing dairy crates. "He doesn't like me leaving before he does," Eli explained quietly, "even if my section's done." The resignation in his tone made Benjamin's stomach turn. Back out front, Jasmine was counting tips at the bar when Benjamin approached. She glanced up and saw the concern on his face. "You saw it, didn't you?" she asked. He nodded. "We all see it," she said, slipping the bills into her bag. "People complain, but nothing changes." Benjamin leaned against the counter, watching the lights flicker above. "Why do you stay?" Jasmine shrugged. "I've got a kid. The schedule works, and I don't let him get to me." She said it like it was armor-thin, but still holding. He asked if anyone had ever reported Todd's behavior. She laughed, dry and bitter. "To who district manager drops in once every few months. Todd puts on the charm for 2 hours. After that, It's back to normal. Benjamin didn't press further. He didn't need to. The picture was becoming clear, and it was worse than he thought. Later that night, Benjamin sought out Daniel, the assistant manager, tucked away in the back office. Daniel was mild-mannered, soft-spoken, and rarely left his corner of the restaurant. "Mind if I ask something off the record?" Benjamin said. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "You've seen how Todd talks to people," Benjamin said plainly. "Why hasn't anyone stopped it?" Daniel scratched the back of his head. "He's been here 6 years, got us through the pandemic. Corporate likes him because his numbers are solid. Food costs are low. That's all they care about." He paused, then added, "He's hard on people, yeah, but they say he gets results." Benjamin didn't show his reaction, but inside something shifted. Loyalty built on fear wasn't loyalty, it was surrender. And a company built on numbers alone was already falling apart at the seams. By the end of the night, Benjamin stood near the back door again, watching staff clock out. Eli was among the last, dragging his feet with exhaustion painted across his face. The culture at this location wasn't just broken, it was toxic. And now Benjamin had the proof. He wasn't just looking at a management problem. He was looking at a betrayal of everything IronGrill was supposed to stand for. The mission had begun with curiosity, but now it was fueled by purpose. Tomorrow he would dig deeper. But he already knew the change wouldn't come from corporate. It would have to come from the ground up. Starting with him. By the fourth evening, Benjamin Carter had seen enough. He had watched the same scenes repeat over and over, Todd barking orders like a drill sergeant Maria, shrinking further into silence, Eli absorbing blow after blow without protest. Even the laughter from guests in the dining room couldn't mask the unease behind the scenes. The team wasn't just tired, they were traumatized. Benjamin had returned early that day, determined to witness everything from prep to close. The moment he stepped into the back hallway, he could already hear Todd shouting about inventory. By 4:30 p.m., the tension was crackling. Benjamin kept his head down and moved through the shift with practiced precision, silently cataloguing each insult, every flinch, every eye that refused to make contact. It was around 7:15 when it happened. The dinner rush was at its peak, orders flying in faster than the kitchen could handle. Benjamin was weaving between tables when he spotted Eli in the corner, balancing a stack of dinner plates clearly too heavy for his frame. The boy turned a corner too fast, and a single plate slipped. It hit the tile floor with a sharp crash, splintering into white porcelain shards. The room went silent for half a breath. Then Todd stormed in from the kitchen, eyes blazing. "Are you kidding me?" he bellowed, pointing to the mess. "What? Are you 5? Eli knelt quickly, face pale, and reached for the shards. It was an accident. Todd cut him off with a vicious kick at a broken piece, sending it skittering. "Save it. That's coming out of your check. You're a damn liability." Time slowed. Benjamin felt something twist deep in his chest, not just anger, but finality. He dropped his tray onto a nearby counter and stepped forward. "Hey," he said firmly, "that's enough." Todd turned, sneering. "You talking to me now?" Benjamin reached up and pulled off his glasses. "Yes," he said, voice level. "I am." The entire room froze. Benjamin removed his wig, then ran a hand over his jaw, wiping away the last of the glue that held his disguise together. "I'm Benjamin Carter," he said clearly. "I own this restaurant." The air shifted instantly. Servers stopped mid-step. Jasmine behind the host stand blinked in disbelief. Daniel had just emerged from the back and stood stunned in place. Todd stared at him, eyes wide. "This some kind of joke?" "No," Benjamin said flatly. "It's not." He turned toward Eli, who was still crouched on the floor. "You okay?" Eli nodded, stunned, silent. Benjamin looked back at Todd. "I've watched you insult, belittle, and threaten this team for 4 nights straight. You're done here. Turn in your keys." Todd's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked around, hoping someone would speak for him, but found only silence. He yanked off his apron, threw it on the floor, and stalked out without another word. Benjamin turned to face the room. "We've got a lot to fix," he said calmly. "But it starts tonight." For a moment, no one moved. Then Jasmine stepped forward and nodded once. "I'll help close," she said quietly. Around her, others slowly resumed their tasks like people waking from a trance. Benjamin knelt beside Eli and picked up one of the remaining pieces of broken china. "You're not paying for this," he said. "Not now. Not ever." Eli looked at him, eyes wide and uncertain. "You shouldn't have to come to work scared." Benjamin meant every word. He stood and addressed the staff again. "I don't expect trust overnight, but I promise you this place is going to change. From the way we speak to each other to how we lead everything, shifts starting now." Daniel stepped forward, next, offering to call in extra cleaning help. Maria appeared from the kitchen, still in her flour-dusted apron, and silently began sweeping the mess. For the first time in days, Benjamin saw something stir in their movements, something fragile but real. Hope. That night, Benjamin stayed to help close. He wiped tables, stacked chairs, even rolled silverware with Jasmine in the back booth. The silence wasn't awkward, it was reflective. Every now and then, someone would glance his way, unsure how to interact with the man who just upended their reality. But Benjamin didn't give speeches. He just worked beside them. As the doors were locked and lights dimmed, he gathered them near the bar. "If you have something to say about what's been happening here, about what needs to change, I want to hear it. I'll be meeting with every one of you one-on-one. Nothing off the record. No filters. You have my word." Heads slowly began to nod. No applause followed, but no one looked away either. That was enough for now. As the team filtered out into the night, Benjamin lingered. The kitchen was quiet, the lights warm and low. Eli passed by with his backpack slung over his shoulder. "Thanks," he said softly. Benjamin offered a small smile. "See you tomorrow." When the last car left the lot, he stood at the edge of the dining room and looked around. It wasn't fixed, not by a long shot, but for the first time the space felt like it was breathing again. And this time it would breathe on the backs of people who mattered. Not numbers, not quarterly profits, people. He rolled his sleeves back down and locked the door behind him. Tomorrow, the rebuilding would begin. Benjamin arrived early the next morning. No disguise, no name tag, no distance between him and the staff. He walked through the front door like any other worker carrying a notepad instead of a clipboard and greeted the young host with a quiet nod. She blinked in surprise but didn't say a word. Word had spread. There was no more hiding, no more undercover acts. As Benjamin made his way to the kitchen, he saw Jasmine already prepping silverware by the soda fountain sleeves rolled up. "You're back early," she said without looking up. "I'm not leaving until this place runs right," he replied. She didn't challenge him. Instead, she handed him a stack of menus. "You want to help? These need wiping down." That was how the day began, shoulder to shoulder, with the people who had kept this place running long before the owner remembered their names. By mid-morning, Benjamin introduced Rebecca Moore, a regional culinary trainer he had pulled from the home office. She arrived with a calm authority, no theatrics, just a weathered knife roll and a schedule in hand. "I've read the files," she said after shaking his hand. "I'll keep the line moving and the staff breathing. You'll get a clean handoff." Within minutes, she was walking the kitchen, checking burners, assessing the stock and calling out prep assignments. She didn't raise her voice, but the energy in the kitchen shifted. Maria responded immediately, falling into rhythm with Rebecca like a seasoned dance partner. Even Eli, who had looked like a ghost the day before, moved with more confidence beside her. Benjamin stayed in the background, watching how Rebecca restored calm through clarity. She wasn't fixing the food, she was fixing the foundation. That afternoon, Benjamin called Maria into the office. She entered cautiously, still wearing her flour-dusted apron and holding a prep list. "You've been keeping this kitchen together for months," he said plainly. "I want you to lead it." Her brows furrowed. "Me? You're already doing the work," he replied. "Now you'll have the title. And the raise." Maria's eyes didn't widen, and she didn't gasp. She just nodded slowly, as if she'd been waiting for someone to finally see her. "Then I'll need a new fryer basket," she said. "The current one's warped." Benjamin smiled. "Done." Later that day, he pulled Eli aside near the dish station. "You ever wanted to move up?" he asked. Eli blinked. "Eventually, but I'm not certified." "We'll pay for your training," Benjamin said. "You've got a place here more than just chopping onions." Eli looked down, almost ashamed. "I didn't think anyone noticed." "I did," Benjamin said. "And I'm not the only one anymore." In the following days, Benjamin formally introduced Marco Alvarez as the new head chef. Marco had come highly recommended, not for his bark, but for his balance. A former Navy cook turned executive chef, he was quiet, observant, and led with a steadiness that inspired trust. On his first day, Marco showed up with a clean apron and no speech. He simply shook hands with everyone on the line, including Eli and Maria, and asked where they felt the kitchen broke down the most. By lunchtime, he had rewritten the prep schedules and reorganized the station flow. He didn't correct people with anger. He asked questions and he listened. Carla, who had once spoken with only her eyes, leaned toward Benjamin during the shift and whispered, "He's the real deal." Benjamin didn't say anything back. He just watched as the kitchen began to hum, not with fear, but with focus. Meanwhile, the front of house was also evolving. Benjamin met privately with Jasmine, offering her what he called quiet authority. No flashy titles, just power where it mattered. "You'll train every new hire," he said. "Final say on schedules. And if someone pushes back, they answer to me." Jasmine leaned back in her chair. "You're serious about this?" "I'm not fixing this place from behind a desk," Benjamin replied. "I need people like you to make it work." She nodded once, then added with a smirk, "Then I'll need a new headset. The old one crackles every time it rains." He chuckled. "I'll order two." From that moment forward, Jasmine became the quiet heartbeat of the front line, pairing new staff with the right mentors, flagging burnout before it became collapse, and running the floor like she was born for it. She didn't ask for credit, but she earned everyone's respect. Lastly, Benjamin made the structural change that had been long overdue. He bypassed the district manager completely. No more filtered reports, no more polished excuses. Daniel, the assistant manager, would now report directly to him. It was a surprising move, but a strategic one. Daniel was quiet but competent, and more importantly, he knew when to ask for help. "Why me?" Daniel asked during their first official meeting. "Because you've seen it all," Benjamin replied. "And you stayed." Daniel nodded slowly. People were starting to think no one cared. Benjamin met his gaze. "That was my fault. But I'm here now, and I'm listening." The next morning, a printed notice appeared on the break room bulletin board. All staff meetings will be held bi-weekly. One-on-one sessions available by sign-up. Leadership is now on the floor, not above it. It wasn't just a new policy, it was a new beginning. By the end of the second week, something subtle but powerful had begun to shift within the walls of the IronGrill Steakhouse. From the outside, nothing looked particularly different. The sign was still the same, the parking lot still cracked in the same places, the booths still worn at the edges. But inside, the temperature had changed. Not the thermostat, the energy. There were fewer clipped voices and more eye contact. Laughter wasn't forced anymore, and people didn't flinch when the kitchen door swung open. Benjamin noticed it first during a lull between lunch and dinner. The playlist overhead wasn't drowned out by stress, and the prep team was working in rhythm, not panic. It wasn't a perfect operation yet, but for the first time in months, it felt alive. New hires were brought in with intention. Benjamin had personally sat in on the interviews, not as an intimidating CEO, but as a quiet observer of character. That's how Sierra James joined the team, a warm, quick-witted server with 3 years of experience and an uncanny ability to remember drink orders and people's names. During her trial shift, she noticed a guest struggling to cut their steak and instinctively offered to switch it out for a filet unprompted. She passed Jasmine's floor test and impressed Daniel with her poise. She was hired the next morning. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Chase the bartender, who once scrolled through his phone while guests waited, never showed up for his next scheduled shift. No call, no message. Benjamin didn't chase him down. He simply documented the absence and signed off on a quiet termination for job abandonment. No drama, no warnings, just accountability. Meanwhile, Eli had begun to blossom under Marco's guidance. His prep work was clean, his plating steady, and his confidence growing by the hour. On his third full shift as a line cook, he nailed the timing on a 6-top order with 0 coaching. Marco clapped him on the back. "Told you," he said, "you've got it." Benjamin watched it unfold from across the kitchen, proud but silent. He wasn't there to hover, he was there to reinforce. And Marco, as the new head chef, was everything the staff had hoped for. He led by example, asked questions instead of shouting answers, and treated feedback like fuel, not fire. Carla, who had once muttered that she didn't trust any chef with clean shoes, now leaned on him for help drafting weekly prep lists. He earned his spot not with dominance, but with consistency. Benjamin made sure his involvement wasn't just symbolic. He showed up daily in jeans and a polo, helping wherever he was needed, plating at Expo, checking inventory, even stepping in for dish duty when the washer called out sick. When a guest complimented the mashed potatoes, he made sure to pass the praise to Maria. When someone left a glowing review about the service, he printed it and pinned it on the break room board. Recognition became a new kind of currency at IronGrill, not performative, but precise. He didn't celebrate perfection, he celebrated effort. People noticed. They stood a little taller when they clocked in, spoke with a little more certainty during team huddles. They weren't just earning paychecks, they were rebuilding a culture. One evening, Benjamin paused at the doorway to the kitchen and just watched. Eli and Maria were trading plating tips while Sierra wiped down the bar with an absent-minded hum. Marco was checking the walk-in inventory with Carla, not to correct her, but to ask for her input on tomorrow's prep schedule. Jasmine was coaching a new busser on how to reset a table with quiet efficiency. The restaurant hadn't just healed, it had evolved. Benjamin saw it in their posture, in their pace, in the way they owned their space. They wore their aprons not as uniforms, but as proof of contribution. The IronGrill logo had become a badge of shared purpose again, not just branding on a paycheck. Later that night, after close, Benjamin stayed behind to count tips with Jasmine. She looked up and said, "The new girl, Sierra." She helped Eli clean the prep station without being asked. Nobody told her to. She just did it. Benjamin smiled. "Then she's one of us." Jasmine nodded slowly. "It's starting to feel like it." He leaned back against the bar arm's crossed eyes on the dining room. "We're not finished," he said, "but we're facing the right way." Jasmine didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence between them was full, not with dread, but with a rare, precious thing in restaurant work, mutual respect. And in that quiet, Benjamin understood something deeply. They hadn't just saved a location. They had restored a living, breathing community of people who believed in the work again. A full week had passed since Todd was escorted out, and the tone of the restaurant had been reset. Benjamin, still arriving every morning before the first knife touched the cutting board, no longer needed to explain why he was there. He simply was. Not as an owner making appearances, but as a leader rebuilding something he'd let fracture in his absence. He'd traded the office chair for a seat at the prep table, the strategy meetings for real-time coaching moments. And now, in the small back office where the walls still smelled faintly of grease and printer ink, he began his scheduled one-on-one meetings with each team member. The door was left cracked open, not because he feared being overheard, but because no one should feel cornered again. Theo came in first. The young man sat with his hands folded stiffly on his lap, still wearing his apron and unsure where to look. Benjamin didn't rush. He let the silence settle before saying, "You don't need to impress me. We already know who's been doing the work." Theo cracked a small smile, but didn't relax fully. "Tell me something you haven't told anyone," Benjamin prompted. There was a pause. Then softly, Theo said, "I almost quit. A couple months ago. I had my backpack on, made it all the way to the bus stop." Benjamin leaned forward. Why didn't you? I saw Maria drowning on the line that night, Theo admitted. I couldn't leave her there. Benjamin scribbled something on his notepad, then looked up. You ever been offered a promotion? No, Theo said, shaking his head. I'm not certified. You want to be? Theo blinked. Yeah, eventually. I'll pay for it, Benjamin said. We'll build you a path. You're not staying in prep forever, unless that's where you want to be. Theo looked down at his calloused hands. I didn't think anyone noticed. I did. The next day, Benjamin met with Maria. She crossed her arms as she entered, but sat with her spine straight and her gaze level. You're not going to ask me to sugarcoat anything, are you? She asked. No. Then I'll tell you the truth, she said. You've got 3 solid cooks. One's looking for another job. 2 are loyal, but they're tired. And none of them had the authority to speak up because Rick drowned out every voice. Benjamin nodded. What do you need? Someone who knows how to hold a line without shouting. Someone steady. Benjamin tapped the file in front of him. That's Marco's specialty. Maria narrowed her eyes. We'll see. He smiled. Until then, you run the kitchen. Her brows lifted. Me? You've been doing it already. Now it's official. With the raise. She stood slowly. Then I'll need another fryer basket. Ours is still warped. Done, he said without hesitation. Later that week, Sierra joined him for a quick check-in at the bar between shifts. She didn't sit until Benjamin motioned toward the stool. Word is you've already memorized the specials, reorganized the server drawer, and helped Eli clean his station after close, Benjamin said. Sierra looked caught off guard. That's just how I work. Exactly, Benjamin said. We hired you for your work ethic, not your resume. Keep going. You've got a future here. She nodded once, unsure how to respond to praise that felt real. Benjamin didn't linger. Back to it, he said, giving her space. Moments like that, brief but affirming, became his new currency. He gave out fewer orders and more opportunities. Less pressure, more paths forward. The restaurant wasn't just holding together anymore, it was growing. Even Daniel, once hesitant to speak above a whisper, began to show confidence. With the district manager no longer between them, Benjamin and Daniel met daily. Schedules were reviewed openly. Hiring decisions were collaborative, and feedback flowed both ways. Staff used to think no one upstairs cared. Daniel said one morning while adjusting the dry erase board. Now they're starting to believe again. Benjamin nodded. Keep saying what you see, not what you think I want to hear. That became their informal motto. No more filters, no more silos. From inventory to interpersonal dynamics, transparency became the lifeblood of the operation. And slowly the energy shifted from endurance to pride. A week later, Benjamin returned to the restaurant, but this time as a guest. No apron, no headset. Just a man walking in to see what had grown in his absence. He waited in line like everyone else. Sierra greeted him with a genuine smile. Welcome in, she said. We've got a new special tonight. Benjamin smiled back. I'll take your recommendation. As he sat near the window, he watched Marco at the line calling out orders calmly. Maria was checking storage temperatures. Jasmine helped a new server reset table 6. And Theo, now in a full-line cook uniform, plated his dish with precision. We're fully staffed, Sierra whispered when she returned with his drink. 3 new hires passed their floor tests. No one's quit in 10 days. That's a record. Benjamin raised his glass. It's a start. As the night came to a close, Benjamin lingered at his table long after the last guest had left. The lights dimmed. The chairs were stacked. But the space didn't feel empty. It felt full, not of noise or chaos, but of belonging. This restaurant, once buried under silence and fear, now pulsed with something better respect. Community. Purpose. It would never be flawless, no place ever is. But now it was honest. Now it was human. And for the first time in a long time, Benjamin didn't just own IronGrill, he believed in it again. because the people inside it believed in each other. If this story moved you or opened your eyes to the quiet heroes behind the scenes, don't forget to support Deep Inside HQ by subscribing to the channel, hitting the like button, and sharing this video with someone who values fairness and leadership that listens. Your engagement helps us bring more real, human-centered stories to life, stories that remind us that true change begins not in boardrooms, but in everyday moments of courage and connection. Stay with us for more narratives that go beyond the surface right here on Deep Inside HQ.